Hello everyone, my name is Ross the Alkeminiturist, and today I wanted to do something a little different. I was laying in bed one night a couple weeks ago, staring at the walls, unable to sleep, most likely due to another one of my I'll just drink this rockstar and do some work and then go to bed. Nothing bad'll happen. Thoughts like that I get at least once a week. And then it hit me. I have art all over my house, but not much in my bedroom. Sure, I have this bag on the wall that says this bag does not contain porn and a couple other art prints. But still, I need more. So I had a choice to make. Do I make or do I buy art? Buying art is fine, but I am, for all intents and purposes, an artist, and I should be able to actually make art for my walls. And what better to make for my walls than some sort of Warhammer-inspired artwork? That's what led me back to my studio. Looking through my not-so-massive pile of shame, I found exactly what I could use. A Space Marines Heroes Season... 4? It's from 2022 anyway. And honestly, it's kind of perfect for what I want it for. It's small and compact. All of the bits in the sprue are solely for this model and not for some other one. So it should be relatively easy to do. The plan is to paint this model on the sprue and just leave it on the sprue and put it in a frame. To do so, I need to make sure that the sprue isn't like 100 different colors at the end. And to do so, I took silly putty that I got from the dollar store and slapped it all over the sprue, being as careful as I can to not get any on or super close to the model bits, because how are you supposed to get the model painted if it's covered, right? Next, the easiest thing to do was firing up my airbrush and shooting AK's white primer through it. Once that was done, I used the airbrush once again to fire white scar through it as well. I have a bad tendency to have some of the primer come off when I'm handling models in between priming and base coating stages, so a little prevention will save a huge headache later. Once that was done, I then slapped on Blood Angel's red contrast paint, as I wanted this marine to be like most of my models and be more dark than maybe they normally were. After that, I grabbed bright gold to quickly paint the insignias on both the backpack, as well as the skull and the chest plate. Trying to keep with my normal paint scheme of darker than I usually see at my local game store, I took Agrax Earthshade and washed it all over the model, making everything just a little darker than what the contrast had originally made it. The gun, body joints, and outer parts of the shoulder pads were all painted with Acryl Black from Pro Acryl. I also used it to cover the base as well, but I did not use it on the space's skull, to make my life easier later. Just as a side note, all the paints will be listed in the description in order of when they were used. Leadbelcher came in clutch for the metal, which is nice, as even though I could have used a Null Oil wash after this, I didn't really want to give it the oily look forever, so I chose to leave it out and leave it a little bit more shiny. Next up is the highlighting. Now, I used Bloody Red by Vallejo and then GW's Trollslayer Orange to highlight the body, and then highlight the highlight. But I'm not one who usually does highlighting like this, and my Trollslayer's Orange is a little bit more runny than I wanted it to be, so this didn't come out as well as I wanted it to, but all in all, I'm happy with the result. I guess it just means I need to do more highlighting in the future. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? Continuing with highlighting, this time the black painted parts, I used Vallejo's medium sea gray, very sparingly to give more depth, and at least this time I did it properly. I even highlighted the highlight using Yulthian Gray. If you can tell, I'm trying to, this year, level up my painting, going from to A. So another item that I needed to learn are eyes and lenses. And this model has both. Using Vallejo Fluo Green to add little dots to the lenses of the helmet, which is way easier to type and to say than to do. I may have had to try a couple of times. The head I tackled with Rekarth flesh to base it, as I wanted him to show as being more pale than maybe is normal in photos and propaganda, as he'd be keeping his helmet on most of the time. Jumping back to the helmet, and using just the teensiest bit of Vallejo's dead white on top of the fluo green I had used on the lenses, I was able to call that part done. Freehand! And then came the free-handed attempts at blood droplets, using more bloody red on the knee pad, which I felt came out really well, seeing as I don't really do freehand like this at all. Vallejo Terracotta was used for his hair, as I wanted a more burnt orange feeling to his hair than the typical red, black, brown, blonde, or ginger that you usually see in most others. Remember that skull I said I didn't want to paint black so it'd be easier to paint with white? Well, I did get some black on it, but it was actually pretty easy to cover it up with dead white and no black showing through. Props to Vallejo for their opaque paints. I then glazed Screaming Skull on top of the white of the skull to give it a more bleached bone looking look, because no skull, when left out in the sun and weather, would be just one color. Zandari Dust came in clutch, and after 2 coats, it gave the base a really nice and desolated ground feeling that I enjoy for my 40k models. Do you want another free-handed blood drop? Yes? Good. No? Too bad. I'm doing it again. Practice is what I need, so maybe I need to do a whole army of Space Marines with some freehand on it. For this one, I used Vallejo's deep yellow and light yellow to create a little more depth in this droplet on the shoulder pad, as I wanted it to not be a flat paint job. I have a problem of doing that sometimes, and I'm trying to get away from the more flat 2D look that I give the models. Parasite Brown by Vallejo was used to put some small shadows on the cheeks of the face of the Marine, so that when I go to wash this with Reclan Flesh Shade, its already three-dimensional head is even more three-dimensional. Isn't that great? As my second to last step, Tamyia panel liner was used on the base to give the lines of the Imperial symbol on the bricks a nicer little pop, but it didn't like to flow on the base like it does on other things. But eventually it started to cooperate after being coaxed by my paintbrush and dragged along. Then it started to flow. I then grabbed Agrax Earthshade again, but this time on the base, and more of a stippling technique was used than a place and drawing down or painting on it like I normally do on my models. This is to get just that much more texture on the base without building the base up higher than it needs to be. I'm working with a limited amount of vertical space in the frame, so I have to be conscientious about that. This is also why I grabbed more of the medium sea gray to do some highlights on the base. Then it's time for a super speedy putty removing montage. When I first thought about doing this video, I had bought the frame first, and not after seeing what would fit inside, which is why it didn't seem to fit inside perfectly, and also why I had to trim down the little point on the sprue before placing it inside the frame. But honestly, it looks good, and good enough for me to not only be happy with the end result, but to display it on the wall for everyone to see. Anyway, if you liked this video and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And as always, keep your brush wet and your models painted, and I will see you later. Goodbye.